Hello, my name's Rhianne Jones. Welcome to part 2. I'm going to talk to you about boosting your immune system using nutrition. Now more than ever, it's really important to be focusing on our diet because it plays a critical role in our overall health and, of course, our immune system relevant here. Now remember that food is our medicine, so we're not just eating for pleasure, we're eating for the health-giving properties of the food. Now we know that food can harm, but also that food can heal. So food really can be used as our medicine. Now if we turn our attention to the immune system to start with, let's have a look at our digestive system. Now we have lots of immune cells within our digestive system that play a critical role in being able to fight off infections and viruses. Now, because we use our digestive system for other things apart from immune function like eating, we need to make sure that we're not stressing it out too much. Now, we would be stressing that digestive system out too much if we were eating junk food, which has been discussed already, but also eating too frequently. Now, it's really important to make sure that you have sufficient rest for your digestion in between meals. So what we would recommend would be to eat 3 meals a day and have sufficient breaks in between each meal so that your digestive system can actually rest and repair and get on with other functions that it has to do rather than be constantly breaking down food. We'd also really encourage a long fasting window from your last meal at night to your first meal in the morning. So rather than having your evening meal really late at night, it's recommended that you have your last meal as early as you can and leave a sufficiently long stretch before breakfast in the morning. So ideally a minimum of 12 hours before you eat again. Now this ensures that especially at night time when your body is resting, repairing, doing all its housekeeping duties, it can actually get on and do the repair rather than trying to break down food over the evening and nighttime period. So we're removing that potential obstacle so your body can get on with repairing at night and doing a lot of its essential maintenance and housekeeping. Now the other thing to kind of factor in is that many people will drink at the same time as when they're eating. It's a bit of a habitual pattern for many people. But actually, by having liquid or a drink while you're eating, you're diluting your digestive juices that are critical in the breakdown of food. So remember that when we're breaking down our food from our digestive juices, we're unlocking a lot of the goodness from the food, which is why we're eating it. But if you dilute those digestive juices by having too much liquid and water, then that slows down the effectiveness of breakdown of food. So remember that we'd want to be making sure we have sufficient breaks in between food. We wouldn't have too much liquid. And we'd also want to make sure that we're not having really huge portions and try and focus on food being light and easy to digest. So lighter food that's easy to digest with lots of nutrients in will be better and less stressful for our digestive system than heavy meals that take hours and hours to break down. So remember all of those factors because collectively they really will help to support your immune system and boost its function rather than actually slow it down. Okay, now let's turn our attention to fruits and vegetables. Now we all know about how important fruits and vegetables are, but do we know why? Now fruits and vegetables contain compounds which are plant chemicals and they're called phytonutrients. Now, phytonutrients are compounds that the plant has produced itself according to its environment to protect itself and for daily function. And we get benefit from those compounds when we consume them. So as well as the fibre and the vitamins and minerals that we know are in fruits and vegetables, that's why we want to consume them. Now, we know that the vitamin and mineral content, as well as this phytochemical content, actually really helps the immune system effectively. So from that point of view, we should be thinking to ourselves, actually, these are really critical. Now, many people say, look, I know I should eat fruits and vegetables and I don't eat enough. But what we tend to say in the profession is that actually we need to be eating fruits and vegetables as if our lives depended on them. Because actually they do. We know that when we look at people's health who haven't consumed sufficient fruits and vegetables on a daily basis, they're much more prone to having frequent infections, feel much more lethargic, and generally, show a poorer profile of health. Now, getting enough portions in a day can be tricky for many people. So the first thing is we want to make sure that we have diversity on our plate. And that means diversity of sources and diversity of colour. So every phytonutrient will bring a different health benefit, as will every colour. So we want to make sure that every day we're having something different. So we're not having the same vegetables every night for our dinner. We're potentially having, for example, carrots one night along with broccoli, and then moving on to something like sweet potato and cauliflower the next night. And making a really conscious effort to rotate, because you know that when you're rotating with that rainbow of colour on your plate, then actually you're likely to be getting as many diverse sources of those phytonutrients as you possibly can. Now, where possible, you want to choose organic. And remember to focus on actually sourcing your fruits and vegetables effectively. Now, in certain seasons of the year, it's difficult to get certain berries, for example. So choosing bags of frozen berries to have in the freezer is a good idea to keep boosting your immune system when certain fruits and vegetables are not in season. Now, the other question I get asked is, can I have all fruit as my daily portion and only one portion of veg? Well, actually, no, that's not what we recommend. We try and ask people to focus on, really getting your vegetable content high, and then just 1 to 2 portions maximum of fruit on a daily basis. Now, moving on from fruits and vegetables and turning our attention now to looking at the importance of fibre for immune function. Now, if we're focusing and trying really hard to have 8 portions of vegetables a day and 2 portions of fruits, not only will we be getting those vitamins and minerals and phytonutrients from those fruits and vegetables, we'll also be ensuring that we're getting enough fibre, which is also critical for health and immune function. Now, the fibre that we're talking about here can only be found in plant food, for example, the fruits and vegetables, grains and pulses. Now, the advantage of having fibre on a daily basis is that will help to bulk out your stool so that you're eliminating waste efficiently and effectively. Now, if you're not eliminating waste in a fashion that's speedy enough, essentially, if you're not passing a stool on a daily basis, remember that that stool is carrying out toxic waste. And if we're not eliminating it, we're keeping it in the bowel where we don't want it. And essentially, that can be a perfect environment for viruses or infections to, set up home, essentially. So we want to make sure that we're eliminating waste on a daily basis, and fibre will also really help with that process. Now, fibre also behaves a bit like a bristle brush on your colon, and it cleans around the corners and the crevices. So that means that your bowel really enjoys having a good dose of daily fibre because it keeps it clean and keeps the waste moving through effectively. Now, there's things that you can help to keep your bowels moving. Water, which we'll look at in a few slides' time, but also things like flax seeds are a great way to keep your bowel moving, and you can sprinkle these in your porridge. So you can see from this image here, so porridge we know has got an abundant amount of fibre in there. We've got some blueberries in there for our phytonutrients, and if we were to sprinkle some flax seeds in it, that would also help with our bowel function. Now, a little tip with flax seeds is that if you put them whole into your porridge, the chances are they'll come out the other side whole. So what you're better to do is grind them with something like a pestle and mortar, and then you can soak them overnight, or you can put them into your porridge ground. And then essentially, if you leave the porridge to soak for a little while, you'll get much more benefit out of the flaxseed than if you just have it whole. So making sure that you're having your vitamins and minerals every day in the form of your fruits and vegetables, essentially your 8 vegetables a day and your 2 fruits, and having sufficient fibre will keep your immune system functioning at its best, essentially. Now let's turn our attention to vitamin C. Now, vitamin C is one of the most key compounds for the immune system, and actually the immune system can't function without having an abundance of vitamin C in our system. We know that essentially, if you have a viral load that's higher than you would want it to be, your vitamin C demand goes up through the roof. Now, many people will often say, I'm definitely having a glass of orange juice a day. And, oranges are the one thing that people think are the only sources of vitamin C. So, yep, they do contain vitamin C, but actually you're much better to have other fruits and vegetables as well as oranges to get a broad-ranging source of vitamin C. Now, when you're having an orange, everyone associates orange juice with vitamin C, but actually you're better to have it in the whole fruit like this because you retain the fibre. And the fibre in there will hold the sugar back from being released too quickly into the system. So the body likes to have it in its whole form, so having the fibre and the vitamin C together. Now, many people actually forget that there's other foods that are really rich in vitamin C. Broccoli is one example, but one of my favourite example is peppers. Now, red pepper is really high in vitamin C, so if you could make sure that you had half a pepper every day with your salad at lunchtime and maybe some more pepper, the rest of the pepper in the evening, you're getting a really good supply of vitamin C. Now, kiwis are another good example, a great portable snack and actually really high in vitamin C that people forget about. So don't just turn your attention to the oranges, try and think about the peppers, the kiwi fruits, the broccoli, for example, and get a more diverse range of vitamin C. Now, when there's viruses and infections around, you need to make sure in preparation for if you meet one, your vitamin C levels are increased. So don't watch and wait. Make sure that you're having enough vitamin C in preparation for if your body meets a virus or an infection, so that your immune system is essentially brilliantly equipped to deal with it and has enough vitamin C so that it can work well. Now, we know that in the presence of this vitamin, our immune cells function better and there's actually more of them. So it's a no-brainer in many ways. So people say, how much vitamin C should I have? Well, the general recommendation is 1,000 milligrams per day for an adult. But one of the clever things about vitamin C is that it's water soluble. And that means that if you have too much of it, you'll just urinate it out. So very expensive urine if you're paying a fortune for supplements, but actually it just gives you an indication that you will go up to what we call bowel tolerance. So if you have too much vitamin C, it will make your tummy a little bit runny, a little bit upset, and then you would reduce the dosage. But the good thing about having it in a food form is, of course, that you've got the fibre in there, and the fibre will slow down that release of the vitamin into the system. If you're delivering yourself a supplement of vitamin C, make sure that you split the dose up between the couple of hours over the course of the day. Don't take huge amounts, or 1,500, for example, all in one hit in the morning, because there's a chance that you'll urinate it out. So you'd be better to have 500 milligrams of vitamin C in the morning and then 500 milligrams in the afternoon. Your body will absorb it much better than loading it with a really high dose. So don't forget your peppers, your kiwi, and of course your broccoli. Now, as well as vitamin C, we have another really important vitamin that plays a critical role in immune function, and that's vitamin D. So more recently, over the last few years, we've really got to understand how critical vitamin D is in making sure that your immune cells have enough army to help them fight off infection. So what we know about useful amounts of vitamin D is that your body is able to literally meet an infection or a virus and call out for backup, call other immune cells to come to the scene to fight off and deal with the infection or the virus. It can't do that if you don't have enough vitamin D. So really, really important. Now, vitamin C, we were just talking about, is very momentary. So you feel the effects instantly and you'll urinate it out if you have too much. But actually, that's not the same with vitamin D. So it can take a couple of days at least to get your stores up so that you see the benefit. But also, you'd want to be careful not to overdose on it. Now we know that vitamin D can be gained through the skin by exposing the extremities to sunlight. So the arms and legs, essentially, or the trunk, for 15 to 20 minutes per day will actually really help to boost up your vitamin D levels. Unfortunately, at this time of the year, we don't see enough sunlight, so we can't really rely on that as our source of vitamin D. So we need to make sure we're getting it through our diet. Now, there's some ways that you can increase it through your diet if you're not supplementing, and you can think about things like the shiitake mushrooms, which you can see in the image, that are actually quite readily available now. Or, you know, there's some amount of vitamin D in chlorella, which is available, and we'll talk about in a moment, or also an oily fish. Now, vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin, and what does that mean? That means that we need to consume that food source with some fat in order to make sure it's absorbed much better. So if you're having it in a food form, an oily fatty fish like salmon, for example, is a wonderful source because there's oil contained in that portion that will really help the uptake of this vitamin. Now we have two more key players in immune function, and we'll start off with zinc. Now, zinc is a mineral that's required in at least 300 processes in the body. Like, you could stand here all day and list all the things that zinc is really important for. And so for that reason, often people find that they are deficient in zinc. But one of the key things that's relevant here is that zinc is really important for wound healing and immune function and fighting off infection. So if you're low in zinc, that means that your immune system and your immune responses will actually be compromised. Now, zinc is really easy to get in nuts and seeds, and pumpkin seeds are one of the best sources that you can get your zinc delivery in. So pumpkin seeds, you can again sprinkle them in your porridge, or you can just have them as a snack. And in terms of portion size, we tend to kind of say with nuts to focus on a fist size, because otherwise it can be difficult to understand how much you should actually consume. Now, examples are literally lentils and grains are also sources of zinc. But again, we come back to this idea that rotating is really important. So making sure that you're not just relying on pumpkin seeds for your zinc sources, but you're relying on other diverse nuts and seeds and pulses, for example. Now, our other really important player is selenium. Now, many people say that actually if you're not doing anything else for your immune system, you should be taking selenium on a daily basis. So it acts like what we call an antioxidant. So it fights inflammation and literally flames that are happening in our body, like a fire, essentially, is what we would say an antioxidant would squash those flames. Because if you've got inflammation, flames in your body, you don't really want to have an excess of that because your immune system will be too busy dealing with that and not fighting off the infection. Now, a good source of selenium are Brazil nuts, and we tend to say actually one of the best source is to have Brazil nuts every day. So have 2 to 3 every day. Your thyroid gland loves it too, which controls your metabolism, but also your immune system will benefit. So again, making sure that you're having nuts and seeds on a regular basis so that you'll get enough zinc and selenium. Now, you can actually soak both of these nuts if you want to, if they're easier to digest, or you can grind them, or literally again in a pestle and mortar and soak them if your digestion is weaker, and then you're still getting the benefit without any digestive disturbance. Now, superfoods are foods that contain nearly all of the vitamins and minerals that we require for optimal health. So there's certain foods that have much more vitamins and minerals than others, and this is where they get into this classification about being a superfood. So there's many of these that are available, and we're just going to have a look at a few of them. So we always want to try and consume superfoods because if we're eating from a health point of view, we want to have as many of those vitamins and minerals, phytonutrients in one serving as possible. Remember, literally food for health, then we're getting as much in one serving as we possibly can. Now, one of my favourite superfoods is, of course, chlorophyll. Now, we find this in grasses. Now, some of the grasses you might be familiar with are wheatgrass and barley grass. Now, these are an amazing food, a superfood, because they contain almost a complete profile of both some amount of protein, vitamins and minerals, and particularly high amounts of magnesium in wheatgrass. Now you can see from the image here that wheatgrass is actually best when it's juiced in a very small portion. Now when you consume it, it's quite a strong taste, so you only need a small amount of it. So from that image, that's quite a hearty portion for someone who hasn't actually had it before. So you'd usually have it in a very small, maybe small cup, maybe 5 mils would be sufficient to start with. And you're getting a huge hit of both magnesium, B vitamins, some proteins, and of course chlorophyll itself, which is essentially almost identical to human blood, only without having iron at its core, it actually has magnesium. So lots of people in traditional Chinese medicine say many of these superfoods are blood tonics, and that's why. So that's the lovely wheatgrass and our story about Anne Wigmore. And then we think about others like the algae. So chlorella is an example of an algae. These together are wonderful for your immune system. Now, I could spend literally all afternoon or all day talking to you about chlorella and all the benefits, but relevant here, of course, is its help with immune function. But what you also have to remember about some of these superfoods, particularly chlorella, is it's very good at helping your body to detox, so detoxify waste that it doesn't need. It's doing that at the same time. Now, why might we want to get rid of those from our body? Because essentially, first and foremost, they're toxic. But secondly, your immune cells might be too busy dealing with other things rather than dealing with infection or viruses. So we always want to make sure we're not overloading the army. So the army of our immune cells are dealing with the important thing, like the virus, and not dealing with other toxins that we don't need. So that's the added benefit of having something like chlorella in your diet on a daily basis. Now, the other superfood that I've actually been in love with recently are sprouts. So broccoli sprouts are an example of those. Now, broccoli sprouts, many people don't realise, but they're literally, I mean, I would say more than 10 times stronger than actually having normal broccoli that's cooked. So they're not only beneficial for your immune system, but they're wonderful as a liver supporting food. So sometimes if our liver's congested, then actually it needs a bit of a clean out, a bit like our digestive system. And broccoli sprouts are really rich in natural enzymes, and these enzymes are literally cleaning agents that will help to break down any waste and matter in the liver and help to clear it out and support it. So using a combination of things like broccoli sprouts and using chlorophyll and chlorella is a great way to support your body when there is extra assault on the immune system, like the threat of viruses or infection. Now, moving on to some other superfoods, let's first of all look at, again, another one of my favourites is garlic. Now, garlic really is a wonder food and has been used for centuries from a health point of view. So we know it's antimicrobial, that means any kind of microbe your body doesn't want, it will help to kill it, but also antiviral, so it's good for viruses. Now, one of the things about white garlic, which you can see here, is it gets better when you actually chop it and break open the surface. These enzymes, again, that we talked about a moment ago, become active when you actually open it and chop it. So if you're going to consume it, which is better to be consumed raw, then actually you can chop it and leave it to breathe for a few minutes before you actually gently simmer it or you actually consume it. Now, I want to just explain to you a little bit about the compound in here, which is called allicin. Now, allicin is activated when you break it open. But one of the other interesting things about allicin is when you age garlic, then it becomes a different compound, but the same in terms of effectiveness. So we have a compound called black garlic, which many of you might have seen is available in supermarkets and health food stores, and you buy it literally as a black clove. It's a bit like a small jelly piece, and that's aged garlic. Now, the wonderful thing about black garlic is it has all the wonderful properties of white garlic, but it doesn't have the odour. So when you have it in its aged form, the allicin changes to another compound and the odour goes, which is what makes it a great alternative to white garlic if you can't tolerate it. Now, many people avoid white garlic because of the odour and the strong taste to it. So if you're one of those people, you don't have to avoid garlic, you can just favour black garlic. Remember, you can find this in small pots, and I would recommend if you're feeling slightly unwell, you feel like you're coming down with something, you could easily consume 3 to 4 cloves of black garlic a day to ward off any further infection. If there is no infection present, you could have 1 or 2 every day. Now, with black garlic, you can actually slice it and have it raw. So you could have it on top of a scrambled egg or have it in a stir fry, and you don't need to cook it. You can put it in at the end of the process and you get this sweet balsamic-y tasting garlic without the odour. So great for children. If you're trying to protect children from infection, they're much more likely to have black garlic than they are white. So I'd urge you to give that a try. Now, the other wonder food that I love is turmeric. So turmeric is an amazing immune support, and it helps with detoxification. So we know that it has a profound effect on the liver and helping the liver to actually clear out waste. It's also anti-inflammatory, so it's been used for centuries for people who have rheumatoid or osteoarthritis, because we know it exerts really powerful effects on inflammation. So relevant here, of course, is that you could have it in cooking in a stir fry, but you could also exchange your cappuccino for a turmeric latte, or similarly a matcha latte. Now, we'll talk about matcha in a moment. That's a green tea extract. But if you're having a turmeric latte, you could very easily have a teaspoon of turmeric powder and have some warm plant-based milk like almond milk or cashew nut milk, and then you've got a nice warming drink with a bit of spice in there. That becomes something therapeutic rather than just having a regular coffee. Now, one of the key things that we know about turmeric is that the absorption of it, in other words, how effectively it gets into your system, is improved when you have black pepper, so piperine. So if you're having it in cooking, it's a really good idea to have some pepper added to it in the same dish, because then it will increase the uptake. And similarly, if you're actually buying a supplement of turmeric in a capsule, you want to make sure that you have a look on the label to see that it has black pepper in there, because you know it's got a much better chance of going where it needs to go to help to support the immune system than being excreted, because you can't actually absorb it. Now, the last superfood is something called beta-glucans. Now, beta-glucans are found in mushrooms, and they also have an amazing antiviral property to them, and they can increase effectively what we call soldiers called interferons, which play a really critical role in managing a viral infection. Now, the last thing we're going to talk about is, of course, water. Now, this is so important, not just for immune function, but actually for overall health. Now, I always say to my clients that you should drink as much water as you can and then try and drink some more, because water is our fluid medium that makes up the body, and actually 60% of our human body is essentially made up of water. But water carries waste around the body and helps to excrete it. Now, if we don't have enough water, then we can show signs of dehydration, which is really stressful for the body and slows down the function of the immune system. Now, many people get confused about how much water they should be drinking. So we usually tend to say at least 1 litre to 1.5 litres of clean, filtered water per day can really have a profound effect on health. Now, if you think about what we were talking about with the colon earlier and fibre, that you might end up having enough fibre in your diet, but you're still slightly constipated, so your bowel is sluggish. It's often because you don't have enough water to clear away the waste. So if you actually imagine a dried up riverbed, and you've got a broken, fallen tree on that riverbed, then essentially that dried up riverbed with a log sitting on it is not going to go anywhere. So as soon as you have water added to the mix, then essentially it's going to move downstream. So our digestive system is exactly the same. If you don't have enough water, you are not in a position to carry away the waste and the toxic material that your body's trying to get rid of. So try and focus on clean, filtered water. Teas and coffees are actually what we call diuretics, so they make your body lose fluid rather than actually get the benefit from the fluid that's in the drink. So I would always say, if you're drinking tea and coffee, reduce it as much as possible, but don't count it as your fluid intake. You probably need to have more when you've had tea and coffee because of the actual diuretic effect. So remember what we learnt about at the beginning of this section, where we said, don't drink lots of water while you're eating meals because it will dilute your gastric juices. But if we build on that idea now, that if you do want to have a drink around your meal, you could have a light herbal tea after you've eaten, something like fennel, which will aid the digestion. So herbal teas will contribute to your water intake for the day, but teas and coffees won't. So following up a meal with a nice peppermint or fennel tea can actually aid digestion and help with your fluid intake, but remember not to have it before. So incorporating different types of herbal teas, you can warm your water up because that helps with your digestion rather than having it freezing cold, which will slow your digestion down. But try and drink as much water as you can, and then remember, try and drink a little bit more.